welcome back to Aviation Insights. I am your host, Benjamin Cooper, and this is the first episode in just over 6 months. Now, the reason being, I got quite busy with a new job. I am currently an aviation reporter. This gives me a lot of insight into the industry, which I aim to bring back to you guys. So let's get straight on to it. Today's topic is going to be the Aircraft Interiors Expo. Now, I'm very excited to have been able to attend this event. This is the moment when airlines and equipment manufacturers come together and design the cabins of tomorrow. In this episode, let's speak about the class in which most people sit all the way at the back, economy class. More specifically, in regional and medium-haul jets. So come along and let's go back into an adventure. I'm glad to have you back. The word of the show this year was lightweight. Whether you went to manufacturers like Mirus, whether you went to manufacturers like Acros, all had the same obsession: lightweight yet comfortable seatings. One of the things that I have noticed during this year's edition of the show is that lightweightness doesn't necessarily mean lack of comfort. You see, there is a new trend now in the industry. I hear some of you saying, if I take certain airlines between major European cities, let's say Paris and London, or let's say Bali, Denpasar to Jakarta, I will have a seat which is very thin and very upright. So these seats are called, fixed back seats. Let me be brutally honest with you. These seats are still going to be made. They are still popular. But what is changing is how they are being built and what kind of materials the paddings will now have. I am not going to name the airlines because I am not here to throw bad light at them. After all, this podcast is about showing what's good in the industry. But gone will be the days within the next decade where you step on the low-cost carrier between, let's say, London and Paris, or, let's say Riyadh and Jeddah. Gone are the days where these will be, very thin and very narrow. Now, obviously, the manufacturers made it clear that the seats correspond to what the customers want, but most of the seats that were on display this year had the same pattern. That is, for the most lightweight, the most economical seat that does not have a recline because it's a very complex mechanism, you will see a leather kind of surface and more padding. Now, what that means is that you may not necessarily need the padding anymore, the recline anymore. For those of you who do not know, the name of those kinds of seats in industry are fixed back seats. Essentially, the back of your seat cannot move. Such types of seats are still popular. There's still demand for them for one very simple reason. In terms of maintenance, from what I have been told at the various suppliers, it requires less work, so it's not as expensive, because all of the parts that are used to make the seat recline, especially in low-cost carriers, are used several times a day, so they're more prone to wear and tear. So that is still staying. Unfortunately, for those of you who do not know these, or who do not like, these type of seats, but improvements are being made to customer comfort as a counterback, so to speak, of the lack of recline. This is because the revenue earning model has shifted in low cost and hybrid carriers away from pretty much charging for everything but the cabin luggage to charging for the cabin luggage and not much else. Of course, still the food and whatnot. So essentially what this means for you, the passenger, is that the airline has more money to invest in seats and is more willing to be a bit more creative in how the seat is going to present itself to the passenger. So, for example, low-cost carriers like Flyadeal, which is the low-cost subsidiary of the Saudi national flag carrier Saudia, who have announced on May 30th in this year's air show, this year's AIX exhibition, they have selected the Acro Aircraft Seating Series 9. So they are Acro Aircraft Seating customers since their launch. Before that, I believe the salesman told me they had a Series 6. So how that will present itself is pretty much divided into two categories, which is something you see a lot now with low-cost carriers who focus on medium to somewhat long-haul sectors. The front few seats will have an adjustable headrest. Those will be hot seats, preferred seats, whatever the marketing department chooses to call them internally, and they will be sold at a premium. Again, the ancillaries like that give the airlines a little bit more flexibility, but it's not massively more expensive. It's good enough, some kind of good upgrade. And at the back, it will be a Series 9 that does not feature the adjustable headrest. That being said, even though you won't have the adjustable headrest, the seat will still be very comfortable because of how it's been designed. So there's lumps on either side of the seat which shape into the shape of a human back, pretty much, at the height of, an average-sized human being, meaning that, you have back support. I'm not sure whether or not the seats will recline. If they do, the recline will add even more comfort. If they don't, the salespeople who showed me the fixed back version of the seat did a demo for me, and the shape of the seat itself is somewhat curved, which means that you're not completely straight. You're not sitting completely straight, making it ever more so comfortable. Besides, those seats will be fitted into A320neos in the case of Flyadeal, not Saudia, which means flights that won't exceed, let's say, more than 3 hours. So for having tried the seat myself, I can say with somewhat confidence that it should be enough given the use case of these aircraft. It is unfortunate that a lot of low-cost carriers decide not to use reclines, but then again, it's all about cost, and I'm happy that, even the competition over there at AIX, I'm talking of most notably Myris Aircraft Seating, who are also a UK-based company who cater more for Asian markets. It's the same new technology of, curved backs and ergonomics. Myris, by the way, is the supplier for seats on AirAsia, which is the most popular, one of the most popular low-cost carriers in Asia. And the airline won some awards last year, making it officially for a few times running the best low-cost airlines in the world. So they must be getting some kind of comfort right. Now moving on to another sector within the short-haul market, so regional jets. These are often overlooked, actually, because when you look at their place within a hub airline, they are like feeder aircraft that operate flights that typically don't go above half an hour. So a lot of airlines don't really see the need to invest in these because their thought process is that very few passengers will be spending a lot of time on board. The idea is really for them to get from point A to point B in really underserved, really niche kind of routes. So we're talking Paris to Lyon, we're talking London to, let's say, Ibiza, London City, with BA Cityflyer. But again, trends are about to change. One of the most important announcements in this year's air show was Explicit's brand new series of seats, the Thai Seat 2X, which is supposed to debut sometime next year or sometime at the end of the year. The deadline wasn't super clear, with Air France on the E190 fleet. And actually, my expectations were exceeded when I visited the stand. So obviously, I am a frequent flyer with Air France, and I've flown a couple of times on the E190. Looking at the trend that some other airlines have set, let's say British Airways, for example, a lot of the seats on the regional airlines regional aircraft, do not recline at all. There's no need for most of the flights. Again, they're very short. Shockingly, the ones made by Explicit reclined. And the reason being that a lot of these aircraft actually do long flights. So they go to places like Gothenburg, they go to places like Ibiza, they go to places like Ljubljana, from Paris Charles de Gaulle. So they fly anywhere between half an hour for the shorter routes to places in pretty much in Germany and what or not. But they also fly longer routes, an hour and a half to 2 hours, for destinations like Gothenburg, destinations like Ibiza, Ljubljana, and obviously they target more a leisure market, people who want to relax before a holiday, people who want to relax also before a business meeting in the case of Gothenburg. So they're going to essentially not copy but follow some of the design ideas from a competitor who was on the A220, who has a similar role. They're very hopeful for these seats because other airlines have also approached them. It is very 21st century, so it includes, if the airlines want it, it will include USB charging, it will include a device holder. So really, at least in how it was displayed in the show, it is anything but a seat for short hops, and yet it is supposed to be on very short aircraft. And next to the Thai Seat 2X was another version of the Thai Seat 2, which is called the Thai Seat 2V. Same thing really, except it was adapted to the Dash 8. So formerly made by Bombardier, now made by de Havilland Canada. The little propeller jets you see on Luxair and you see in Canada. In fact, speaking of Canada, they are the launch customer of the Thai Seat 2V. Same kind of concept. A spacious seat for a regional carrier that do short hops in Canada. But then again, the reason why Air Canada chose these kind of seats, because even though the majority of how it's going to be used is only for flights of half an hour and more, some of the flights do hops across Canada and can take several hours, for example, between Montreal and Vancouver. So we have now pretty much covered the regional jet and the medium short haul section of the AIX 2024 show. I thank you very much if you've made it this far into the podcast, and I will see you next week for another episode of this podcast. I am your host, Benjamin Cooper. This was Aviation Insights. See you next week.